I had just cut a small slice of cake for myself, the candles still flickering, the silence of my empty house louder than ever, when my phone lit up. A message from my son. Just 6 words. You're useless. Stop bothering us. That was my birthday gift. From the boy I carried, the man I raised. But he didn't know, while he was calling me useless, I was preparing to rewrite the story of my life. My name is Caroline Whitaker, and I turned 74 this year. I didn't expect a parade. I didn't expect cake or laughter or grandkids running around my legs like they used to. But I didn't expect complete silence either. It was the kind of silence that hums in your ears. The kind that creeps under your skin. I had set the table myself, out of habit more than hope. 2 plates, one for me and one for whoever might show up. Maybe Thomas, my son. Maybe Alina, his wife. Maybe even my granddaughter Sophie, who used to spend every summer here. But the clock ticked on. No car pulled up the driveway. No knock on the door. Just me, a store-bought cake, and a heart that had grown a little quieter over the years but never stopped hoping. At 7:42 p.m. I checked my phone. No missed calls. No messages. Not until a little past 8, when a notification buzzed softly, like an afterthought. Thomas, you're useless. Stop bothering us. I stared at those 6 words like they were written in fire. It wasn't the first time he'd said something cruel, but it was the first time he put it in writing. So permanent. So confident. I didn't cry. Not right away. I just stared at the message, the sting rising slowly, like a bruise beneath the skin. Was that who I had become to him? Useless? The woman who sold her wedding ring to help with his mortgage? The one who took care of his daughter for 6 months straight so Alina could find herself in Bali? The one who paid for their first car, their second, and part of the down payment for their dream house, because Thomas promised, "Mom, we'll never forget what you've done for us." They forgot. I spent that night curled up on the couch, the television playing an old Cary Grant movie I wasn't watching. I kept thinking back, trying to pinpoint where the thread had snapped. Thomas was a kind boy once. Sensitive. He used to cry when I scraped my knees gardening. He brought me daisies from the backyard when he was 5. He clung to my hand on the first day of school, whispering, "Don't go far, okay, Mama?" But somewhere along the road, that boy vanished. In his place grew a man hardened by ambition, or maybe entitlement. And Alina? Well, she never liked me. She thought I was old-fashioned. Too honest. Too observant. I saw through her designer smiles. I knew the moment she married Thomas, she saw me as a tool, a source of money and babysitting. Still I gave. Because that's what mothers do, don't they? We give, even when no one says thank you. We love, even when the love isn't returned in the same measure. We hope, even when our hearts whisper, "They've changed." The next morning, I shuffled out to the garden. The roses were in bloom. My husband had planted them 30 years ago, before the cancer took him. He used to say, "Caroline, you've got the heart of a warrior and the hands of a saint." I touched the petals. I missed him. But I also felt something else. Not just sadness. Not just loneliness. A slow-burning ember of anger. The kind that starts low in your chest and rises until it demands to be acknowledged. How had I let them make me feel small in my own life? I wasn't useless. I was a woman who had survived loss, who had raised a son on her own, who had taught, cooked, budgeted, mended, healed. And I had one secret they didn't know. One final card they hadn't counted on. It started almost a decade ago. Quietly. After Thomas and Alina's 3rd loan went unpaid. I had sat in my kitchen one night, staring at an empty savings account, and realized I couldn't trust them with my future. So I started putting aside what little I had. From my pension. From teaching piano lessons to neighborhood kids. From baking pies for the church fundraiser. I sold some of my old jewelry. Not the sentimental ones, just the pieces I never wore. I invested conservatively. Real estate, small funds, and, thanks to a kind advisor named Ms. Delgado at the credit union, I bought a tiny property outside town and rented it out. And over the years, it grew. Not millions, but enough. Enough to live comfortably. Enough to start over. Enough to make a point. And yet, I never told them. Not out of malice, but because I knew they'd twist it. Ask for more. Demand it. Expect it. So I waited. Later that afternoon, I sat across from a woman I hadn't seen in 5 years. Her name was Linda, my old friend from teacher training. We reconnected through a church bulletin last year. She was sharp, no nonsense, with eyes like an eagle and the wit of a lawyer. Fitting, because she'd become one. She looked at me, set down her tea, and said, "Caroline, you look like a woman who's just made a decision." I nodded slowly. "I'm tired, Linda. Not just tired of being left out. I'm tired of being used." "And what do you want?" I looked at her, not blinking. "I want to protect myself. Legally. Financially. Emotionally. I want control again." She smiled, like I'd just passed a test. "Then let's get to work." That week was the beginning of something I hadn't felt in years. Power. We drafted a new will. I transferred properties to a trust, one they had no access to. I updated beneficiaries. We created boundaries. Legal ones. Emotional ones. And then I started documenting everything. The loans. The unpaid debts. The messages. The exclusion. I even hired a private financial investigator, just to confirm what I suspected, that my previous gifts were never used for what they claimed. The Hawaii trip? Not a couples therapy retreat. The second car? Sold for cash, used to pay off Alina's credit card debt. The home repairs they begged for? Never happened. Just excuses to get more from me. The evidence was there. And so was my resolve. But I didn't move in anger. I moved in peace. Firm. Quiet. Strategic. I didn't want revenge. I wanted freedom. And if they forced my hand, I was ready to show them exactly how much they had underestimated me. When Linda slid the folder across the table, the weight of it was more than just paper. It was years of quiet pain, unspoken sacrifices, and hard truths finally gathered together. Neatly labeled. Dated. Verified. I stared down at the contents of my own story. Written not in love letters, but in receipts, bank transfers, ignored texts, and casual cruelties. It was all there. Proof of who I'd been. Proof of who they had become. Linda sipped her chamomile tea and said gently, "You don't have to show this to them, Caroline. But you should have it. In case one day they try to take more." I nodded. "They always take more." Her voice softened. "Then it's time you stop giving." The next few days, I didn't call Thomas. I didn't answer his wife's rare, sharp-edged calls either. I stayed silent. And in that silence, something inside me stretched. Like a muscle long dormant finally remembering how to move. I planted tomatoes. Cleaned out the attic. I found my late husband's watch tucked into a drawer beside a yellowed letter he'd once written me. In it, he said, "If they forget your worth, remind them. But don't beg. You were never meant to beg." That night, I sat in my favorite armchair, the lamp casting a soft amber light across the living room. The same room where Thomas had taken his first steps. The same room where Sophie used to build pillow forts. Funny, how a place can hold so much love and so much sorrow at once. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a voicemail. From Sophie. "Hi, Grandma. I know Mom doesn't really want us to come over anymore. But I wanted to say happy birthday. I love you. I miss you." Her voice cracked on the last word. She hung up before I could answer. I pressed the phone to my chest. And I cried. But not the same way I did after Thomas's message. These were quiet, warm tears. Not of loss but of clarity. Sophie hadn't forgotten. By Sunday morning, I was ready. I didn't plan a confrontation. Not yet. Instead, I planned a brunch. Just Thomas and me. I called him. He didn't pick up. So I sent a message. Sunday. 10 a.m. Just you and me. Come hungry. He replied 2 hours later. Fine. No apology. No warmth. But he was coming. That was enough. I cooked everything he loved from childhood. Apple cinnamon pancakes, crisp turkey bacon, and his favorite, my lemon thyme potatoes, browned in a cast iron skillet. The table was set, the air smelled like comfort, and I even wore the navy blue blouse he once said made me look like a senator's wife. At 10:17 a.m., he finally walked in. Tall, handsome in that careless way, expensive coat slung over his shoulder, phone in hand, distracted. Always distracted. Smells good, he muttered, barely meeting my eyes. Sit, I said simply. He did. For the first 10 minutes, we ate in silence. He scrolled on his phone while I poured coffee. I didn't push. I watched. I waited. Then I slid the envelope across the table. He paused. Looked down at it like it might bite him. What's this? Proof, I said calmly. He blinked. Of what? Of everything I've done for you. And everything you've done in return. He chuckled. Mom, is this some guilt trip thing? No, I replied. It's a record. In case you ever try to call me useless again. Or worse, try to take what's mine. His face stiffened. Jesus, Mom, are you serious right now? I leaned in. My voice calm. Firm. You stopped seeing me as your mother a long time ago, Thomas. You started seeing me as a wallet with memories. Well, the wallet is closed now. And the memories, those are mine. Not yours to manipulate. He pushed the envelope aside. Is this because of that one text? You're being ridiculous. One text, I said, still not raising my voice. It's been years of this. Of me giving and you taking. Of you teaching your daughter to forget me. And now you're angry I've finally drawn a line? He stood up, agitated. This is Alina's influence. You've never liked her. I stood too. No. I've never trusted her. There's a difference. And I was right. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Good. Let the silence speak. You have a choice, I said. You can keep living in that house I helped pay for. You can keep pretending I'm some burden. But you will never again take from me. Not my money. Not my peace. Not my time. You don't mean that. I do. His voice turned bitter. What? Are you gonna write me out of the will? I already have. That stopped him. For the first time in years, Thomas looked at me. Not through me. You're bluffing, he muttered. I smiled. I'm not. After he left, slamming the door so hard the floor vibrated, I sat back down and took a sip of cold coffee. My hands were trembling, but not from fear. From release. For the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen by myself. That night, I got another voicemail. From Sophie again. Grandma, Dad seemed upset. Did something happen? He never talks, but I can tell. I just want you to know. I remember everything. The pancakes. The tea parties. The stories. I remember it all. And I love you. My voice cracked as I whispered into the phone. I love you too, sweetheart. The next morning, I met Linda again. We sat in her office, surrounded by tall bookshelves and quiet strength. She smiled. How did it feel? I smiled back. Like planting a flag. On my own land. Finally. Good, she said. Because we're just getting started. The morning after the confrontation with Thomas, I didn't feel broken. I felt reborn. Not in the grand dramatic sense. Not like in the movies. It was quieter than that. Like the first time you open a window after winter and realize you've survived something. Something long and hard and cold. I sat at my kitchen table with a notepad and pen. No distractions, just thoughts and paper. This time, I wasn't writing grocery lists or reminders to pick up Sophie from school. This was a different kind of list. What I want from my life. Now peace. A place that is mine, truly mine. Truth, even if it hurts. Connection. With those who love without asking for anything. Legacy not just in money but in meaning. That last one stopped me. Legacy. That word used to make me think of Thomas. I used to imagine him telling Sophie stories about my courage, my strength, my lemon potatoes. Now, I didn't even trust him to water my plants. Linda had introduced me to a financial planner named Ruth, a fierce woman with silver braids and a mind like a steel trap. We sat together in her office, and I explained everything. My secret savings, my small property investments, the trust I'd started to build. She leaned back, impressed. You've done more than most people your age, Caroline. Honestly? Most women don't take these steps until it's too late. I gave her a small smile. That's what happens when people call you useless. You remember everything you've done to prove them wrong. We spent hours mapping out my estate. Not for Thomas. Not for Alina. For Sophie. But I wouldn't just give it to her. Not yet. Not while her parents still had so much influence. Instead, I started a new fund. Quiet. Untraceable to her father. A future waiting for her. Not just money but choices. Freedom. Opportunity. I named it the Daisy Fund. After the flowers Thomas used to bring me when he was a boy. Before he forgot. Later that week, I called Sophie. She sounded surprised, and then thrilled. Grandma! Wait. Are you okay? Dad said. I cut her off gently. I'm fine, sweetheart. I miss you. Can we have tea sometime soon? Just us. She hesitated. Then whispered. Yes, but I can't tell them. If Mom finds out, she'll go crazy. You don't have to tell anyone. We'll meet like spies. Two very well-dressed spies. She laughed. And just like that, I had her back. At least a piece of her. We met at a small tea room in town. One Alina would never step foot in. Not fancy enough. Sophie walked in wearing a cardigan I'd knitted her years ago. Still slightly too big. Her eyes, those same sea glass green ones I once saw in the crib, lit up when she saw me. I stood, opened my arms, and she ran into them like a wave. Grandma, she whispered. I've missed you so much. She was taller now. 17. Bright, but quieter than before. Like something in her had learned to hide from the world. I hated that. I hated what her parents had done to her light. We sat. Talked about nothing and everything. Until finally I asked, how are things at home? She bit her lip. Okay, I guess. Mom's always on her phone. Dad's different lately. Tense. Do you ever feel forgotten? She looked up. Her eyes watered instantly. All the time. I reached across the table, held her hand. You're not. Not by me. And in that moment, I made a silent promise. I will not leave this girl in their hands, unprotected. That night, I walked out to my garden again. I pruned the roses, watered the soil, and let the moonlight guide my steps. But something strange caught my eye. A car. Parked halfway down the street. Same model as Alina's. Lights off. Watching. I stood perfectly still. The hose still running. After 5 minutes, it pulled away. The next day, I called Linda. She wasn't surprised. They know something shifted, she said. You've cut the strings, Caroline. They're watching to see how much power you really have. I leaned forward. Then let's show them. The investigation I'd commissioned weeks ago finally came in. Linda handed me a thick envelope with a simple title. Assets and Transfers, Whitaker Family. Inside were bank statements, shell account info, a fake renovation company, registered to Alina's maiden name, and withdrawal records that led straight to my earlier gifts. Alina had funneled over $92,000 through fake invoices and bounced it into a private savings account. Thomas had to know. Or worse, helped. And I had the paperwork now. You ready to confront them? Linda asked. I shook my head. Not yet. She raised an eyebrow. Why not? Because I want Sophie to see it too. I want her to know the truth. Not from their mouths, but from mine. Come. Clean. Honest. Are you sure? Yes. I've been quiet my whole life, Linda. But I want the truth to ring like a bell. I invited them over. All of them. Thomas. Alina. Sophie. They didn't want to come, especially not Alina, but I said I had an announcement about my estate. The magic word. Alina showed up in heels and disdain. Thomas in another overpriced coat. Sophie looked afraid. I sat them down at the long oak table. The same one that held birthday cakes, report cards, and broken promises. I had 3 folders. Neatly labeled. I slid the first to Alina. This is a record of the fake renovation company you used to steal from me. She blinked. What? Don't lie, I said, still calm. Everything's in there. Down to the tax fraud. Thomas paled. Mom, this is crazy. You've been misled. I slid the second folder to him. This one's for you. Your name appears in most of the transfers. You knew. Sophie gasped softly. They started arguing, voices rising. But I didn't look at them. I turned to her. Sophie, I said gently. The third folder is for you. It has no accusations. Just the truth. The full truth. And my promise, to protect you from the weight of their choices. Alina stood up, furious. This is disgusting. Thomas followed. You've lost your mind. But Sophie didn't move. She looked at me. And for the first time in a long time, I saw belief in her eyes. I'm staying, she said quietly. They yelled. Threatened. Alina demanded I retract everything. I didn't. I simply said, this house is mine. The records are real. The future is protected. And from this point on, I'm no longer afraid of you. They left. Sophie stayed. We made tea. Thomas and Alina filed a claim, accusing me of mental instability to access my estate. But I wasn't shaken. With Linda by my side, we countered every falsehood with facts, every accusation with evidence. Sophie, brave as ever, submitted a statement in my defense. When the judge read the documents, fraud, theft, manipulation, their case unraveled. The court ruled in my favor. That night, Sophie hugged me and whispered, You saved me too, Grandma. And that's when I knew. I didn't just win a battle. I reclaimed my legacy. Not in wealth, but in truth, courage, and a love they couldn't erase. Sophie found me in the garden that morning, kneeling in the soil with gloved hands and a tired but content heart. Still working on those roses, Grandma? She teased, stepping around the stone path I'd laid myself. I looked up, the sun haloing her silhouette. She was blooming in her own way now, confident, clear-eyed, and no longer looking over her shoulder for her parents' approval. Roses need tending, I said. Just like legacies. She knelt beside me, brushing a petal gently. This is your legacy, you know. This house. These flowers. Me. I smiled, and for the first time in a long time, I believed it. The final touches were falling into place. Ruth had set up the Daisy Fund as a long-term, protected trust, its details sealed tight with legal reinforcement. Sophie would be able to access it when she turned 21, free from any parental interference. Linda helped me update the trust's conditions. Educational support, emotional wellness stipends, even seed capital if she wanted to start her own nonprofit or business. But it came with a letter from me, to be opened only on her 21st birthday. It began, To my darling Sophie, this isn't a reward. It's recognition of who you are and what you'll become. I cried writing it. Not because I was sad, but because I'd finally put my love somewhere it could grow, untouched by manipulation. One quiet afternoon, Sophie brought me a surprise. A canvas. She'd painted our garden from memory. The bench. The bird bath. The roses. Even the chipped watering can. But in the corner, she'd painted us. Me sitting on the bench, her on the grass, our faces turned toward each other, laughing. She called it, Still Here. And that title broke something open in me. Because that was the truth, wasn't it? They tried to erase me. dismiss me, undermine me. But I was still here. Still standing. Still loving. Still choosing peace without forgetting my worth. Then came the call. Thomas again. I didn't answer. I let it go to voicemail. Mom, I know you got my letter. I understand. But I just wanted to say thank you. For everything. I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I hope Sophie tells you one day. I'm trying. I really am. I saved the voicemail. I didn't return it. Maybe one day. But not now. Instead, I walked through my home with Sophie and told her every story tied to every photograph. The burnt pie on the wall from her father's 12th birthday. The piano bench dented from when he slipped off trying to impress a girl at 16. The brass lamp from her grandfather's first paycheck. She listened, wide-eyed and quiet. You remember everything, she whispered. I had to, I said. When everyone else started forgetting. That night, I took out my old journal again. I added one more line. I gave away my power for years. But when I finally took it back, I built something they couldn't tear down. I closed the book. Locked it in the same box we'd opened weeks earlier. Then I placed the key in Sophie's hand. Why me? She asked softly. I cupped her cheek. Because you didn't ask me for anything. You just showed up. You listened. You stayed. She hugged me tight, and I felt every moment of motherhood surge back into my arms. Not for Thomas. Not for redemption. But for her. For the future. The summer light filtered through the kitchen curtains in soft golden ribbons. I was folding a dish towel when Sophie walked in, holding a white envelope with both hands. She looked pale, eyes bright with emotion. Grandma, she said quietly, I did something. I turned, wiping my hands. What is it, sweetheart? She handed me the envelope. I wrote a letter. About everything. About you. About them. About me. I submitted it to the local paper for the scholarship contest. But they published it. I froze. She added, they also put it online. Everyone's seen it. I unfolded the letter slowly. Her handwriting was neat. Intentional. Every word carried weight. The Strongest Woman I Know. By Sophie Whitaker. My name is Sophie, and I want to tell you about someone people often ignore. Someone who sat quietly while others talked over her. Someone who gave without question, and forgave even when it hurt. Her name is Caroline. She is my grandmother. When I was younger, I didn't notice how often she was left out. Of celebrations, of decisions, of respect. I didn't realize my parents were taking from her. Money. Time. Dignity. I was taught that her worth was tied to what she could give. But I saw the truth in her eyes. I saw how she loved without conditions. How she carried pain with grace. How she never let bitterness claim her. One day she stood up. Not loudly. Not violently. She simply said, no more. And I watched her reclaim her life, not just in courtrooms and bank statements, but in the way she poured tea for me again. In the way she laughed from her belly. In the way she looked in the mirror like she finally saw herself again. She taught me that power doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers, I remember who I am. She is the strongest woman I know. By the time I finished, tears were sliding down my cheeks. I looked up. Sophie's face was wet too. I pulled her into my arms and held her like I used to when she was small and couldn't sleep unless she curled into my chest. But this time, it wasn't her fear I was holding. It was her power. The letter went viral. At least in our small town. People I hadn't spoken to in years called me, stopped me in the grocery store, dropped by with fresh bread or flowers. One neighbor, Mrs. Lewis, hugged me and whispered, I wish I had your courage when my son did the same. Another woman, younger, said, you remind me of my mom. She passed before I ever got to say thank you. The silence that used to suffocate me had been replaced with echoes. Echoes of other women who had been told they were too much, or not enough. Echoes of mothers, grandmothers, aunts who gave everything and got nothing in return. Now they were speaking. Now they were seen. And then came the letter from Thomas. Not an email. Not a voicemail. A real, handwritten letter.
Mom.
I read Sophie's article. I cried halfway through. I showed it to Alina. She said it wasn't true. But I knew it was. Everything in me wants to take it back. All of it. The greed. The coldness. The years I spent justifying things because we were struggling or because I didn't want to upset her. But the truth is, I chose comfort over conscience. I let her use me to get what she wanted, and I used you to get what I needed. You didn't deserve any of it. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But if there's ever a moment, even in the distant future, where you feel like letting me try again, I'll be here. I love you. I always have. I just forgot how to show it. Thomas. I read it. I didn't cry. I felt something deeper than sorrow. I felt clarity. People always talk about closure like it's something someone else gives you. But I'd found it long before that letter arrived. Still, I folded it gently and placed it beside the one Sophie wrote. Not because he earned a place beside her, but because someday she might want to see that her voice changed something. Sophie and I baked a lemon cake that evening. Her favorite. We danced in the kitchen while the timer ticked. She played music from her phone, and we spun, clumsy and laughing. I can't believe people know who I am now, she said. They don't know who you are, I replied, nudging her. They're just starting to find out. After dinner, I handed her an envelope of my own. Inside, a small check. Not from the trust fund. Just a personal gift. For your first apartment when you go off to university. She looked shocked. Grandma, this is too much. No, sweetheart, I said, smiling softly. It's just enough. The next morning, I got a call from the local women's shelter. One of the volunteers had read Sophie's article and told the director. They asked if I'd be willing to speak to the women, maybe mentor a few of the younger ones. Share my story. I hesitated, then said yes. Because I realized, this voice I'd been afraid to use for years, it still worked. The room was warmer than I expected. A soft hum of whispers floated in the air. Women from all walks of life settling into folding chairs. Some were barely out of their teens. Others wore decades on their faces, like me. I stood just behind the curtain of the community center stage, my hands trembling. Not from fear, but from the weight of truth I was finally ready to carry in public. Linda stood beside me, placing a reassuring hand on my shoulder. They want to hear you, Caroline. Just be who you are. I looked down at my notes. But I didn't need them anymore. I had lived this story. And now I was going to tell it. The lights dimmed as I stepped up to the podium. Sophie was in the front row, beaming, her eyes glossy with pride. I took a deep breath and began. There was a time not long ago when I believed silence was strength. That being a good mother meant swallowing hurt. That being a good woman meant never making anyone uncomfortable. But silence can be a cage. And strength isn't found in suffering. It's found in reclaiming what's been stolen from you. Your time, your truth, your self-worth. On my 74th birthday, my only son sent me a message. You're useless. Stop bothering us. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Those 6 words could have broken me. For a moment they did. But what my son didn't know, what no one knew, was that I'd already started taking steps to protect myself years before. I had savings, a plan, a will, and a heart that still had enough fight left in it. I want to tell you what I told him. I am not disposable. I am not a burden. I am not a mistake you made while climbing the ladder of your own life. I am the woman who raised you, who gave and gave and gave, until I realized I didn't owe anyone my silence anymore. And if you've ever been told you're too old to start over, too weak to matter, or too quiet to be heard, I'm here to say, they're wrong. By the time I stepped off that stage, the room was on its feet. Not for me. For themselves. For every woman in that room who saw a piece of her own pain reflected in mine. I hugged strangers who clutched my hands and cried, who whispered thank you, like it was a secret they'd waited years to share. And when I found Sophie again, she hugged me so tight I thought my ribs would break. You were brilliant, Grandma, she whispered. No, darling, I said. I was just honest. The days that followed felt like the first true spring of my life. I was invited to speak again. I started mentoring 2 young women, both rebuilding their lives after leaving controlling families. I taught them how to open bank accounts, how to track every dollar, how to ask questions without apologizing. It was like gardening all over again. Except this time, I was planting seeds in people. Then, one Saturday afternoon, as I arranged fresh lavender in the living room, the doorbell rang. Sophie had gone to visit friends. I was alone. I opened the door. And there he was. Thomas. He looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I'd grown. His hair was more gray than last time, his face thinner. But the moment our eyes met, I saw it. Remorse. Not performance. Not manipulation. Real, raw regret. Hi, Mom. I didn't say anything. Just stepped aside. He entered slowly, like the house might reject him. We sat across from each other in the living room. I know I should have called first, he said. I nodded once. Yes. You should have. He lowered his eyes. I wanted to see you. Not to ask for anything. Not even forgiveness. I just wanted to look you in the eye and say I'm sorry. Silence. Then quietly he added, I read the article again. Sophie's words. They gutted me. Because I remember the woman she described. You were that. And I forgot. I stared at him, studying every wrinkle of guilt, every pause in his breath. I hurt you, he said, voice cracking. Over and over. Yes, I replied simply. You did. He wiped his eyes. I don't expect to be part of your life. But I'd like to be part of hers again. Sophie's. If she'll let me. That's her decision, I said. But know this, Thomas. If you ever hurt her, even a fraction of how you hurt me, I will burn every bridge between you. Do you understand? He nodded, tears now streaming. I do. I didn't hug him when he left. But I didn't hate him either. Because the power wasn't in whether I forgave him. It was in knowing I no longer needed anything from him to be whole. That evening, Sophie returned home, saw the untouched teacups, and asked quietly, He came, didn't he? I nodded. She looked out the window for a moment. Was it awful? No, I said. It was real. Later, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted our house in amber and honey, I stood in my garden one last time that season. The roses had begun to wilt, as they always do. But I didn't feel sad. Because I knew they'd return. They always did. And so had I. They called me useless. But I used their silence to find my voice. They tried to erase me. But I became unforgettable. They took everything they could. And I still had more to give, to myself. I am not bitter. I am not broken. I am Caroline Whitaker. And I finally remember who I am.